Hi, George here with another really old project. I did this one way back in 2016. Let's go ahead and redo this here in a modern version of Photoshop Elements and see if it's any easier. It's a good one to review anyway. There were some nice tricks I did in this particular project. All right, now the first thing we need to do is to download these two images. Let me bring up those websites for you. The first one's my favorite. It's Pixabay, and I'll put this link in the description so you can go ahead and get right to this page. Go over here to download. And we're working with the 1920 by 1271 image size right there. That's one that we're using. And then the second one over here is on a site called unsplash.com. Also a good site for getting free images. Same thing, download for free right over here. And you can choose the size you want to use. Medium is okay for us. That's 1920 by 1079. So go ahead and download those two images. And let's go back over into Photoshop Elements. Now before we start this project, I just want to remind you that I have complete training courses for all the different versions of Photoshop Elements, and put a link for that right down there in the description. I cover a lot here on YouTube, but there's a lot that I don't cover at all. Like I almost never talk about the organizer in here. And there are a lot of tools I never cover here on YouTube. I kind of stick with mostly the photo editing things like we're doing here. There's so much more you can do with Photoshop Elements, and I cover all of that in my training course. So if you want to find out more about that, take a look at that link right down there in the description. Okay, let's get back to this project. All right, we can close this down. Let's get this out of the way. And then we'll bring in those two new images. Now I downloaded mine into a folder. It's called the folder projects. Let me bring that up. And I have this on my C drive. I use this just as a temporary holding space when I'm working on a new project. Let's just select both of those, hit the open button. Here we go. And we'll bring both these images in. Now mine come in as floating windows. This is kind of useful. If you don't have floating windows enabled, just go up here to edit, come down to preferences and general right there. And it's that checkbox right here, allow floating documents in export mode. This is normally unchecked by default, so make sure you have that one checked. This is how Photoshop runs. This is one way to make your program run a bit more like Adobe's Photoshop program. Now we'll be using this one as our base image. So I'm just going to dock this one. There we go. And then we'll take this image here and just drag this one in just like that and drop it in. Okay, we can close that down. So now I have both images in the one file. And right about here is about where I want the girl. We'll reposition her a bit later. The size is good though. I think we're just fine on that. Now the basic steps in here, one is of course to remove this background from this girl so then see the new background behind the girl. Second one is going to be to do any cleanup or fixing in here. The fur is a real problem over here. I have a trick for making the fur look better. And then the third part of this is to put a highlight around the rim here of the girl's hat and face to kind of mimic the colors in the sun in the back there. Okay, we'll start off with the first part of this, and that is to separate the background out from the girl and remove that background. We'll be using a layer mask to do that. You can use any technique that you want on this. I'm just going to zoom in a little bit here with our zoom tool. A bit too far. There we go. And because we're in a newer version of Photoshop Elements, we do have up here the select and subject right there. Click on that. And this should find that picture for us. There we go. Did a real nice job. It's not perfect, but it's a real good, clean job. And we'll be using this for this project. Now, if you don't have this, if you're working on an older version of Photoshop Elements, let me just do Control D to deselect that. You can still do this the old way. Just grabbing a selection tool. I'll use the regular lasso tool here. You can make a lasso like this right around the girl. Make sure you get everything in here. You don't have to get real super close on this, but close enough. Kind of like that. And then at this point, we'll be using Refine Edge and use that to cut this in a lot closer. Now there's one problem on this, and that's right up on the hat, right up in here. You may want to come in and do that part of the hat more carefully, possibly using the polygonal lasso tool to select right around the hat to get real close in selection on that. And then everything else can be just a little ways out like this. So I'm just going to deselect this. Here we go. We'll go back up here to our subject select like that. Now, even though this is right against the edge, it's still not good enough. We still have to come in and clean this up using Refine Edge. So at this point, the exact same steps will apply either way. So make your basic selection and then come down to Refine Edge. Now I have my feathering here set at 1 pixel. It makes it just a little bit softer. You want just a little bit of a soft edge on that so it blends into the background better. It just helps that you don't get a real hard edge which looks fake. Hit Refine Edge. We don't have any real contrast problems in here, anything like that, so we're okay with the basic settings. Sometimes I'll move the contrast to the middle, but that does tend to soften down your edges further. So right now I'll leave that at the bottom. I won't bother with any of these. And I have the view mode here set on overlay. You can see why. It gives you this nice kind of a red overlay in here. This actually goes back way back when we were still doing things by hand. Now red blocks out light, so it acts like black if you're working with black and white images. And they used to make a product called Rubylith, which is a red film. You would actually take your picture, take your photograph, and then cut out the shape in here with a blade or a knife on some Rubylith film, and then use that to block out the background as you're taking this into your darkroom. So it's the same basic concept. We still have the same colors in here. Okay, so we have our setting. Now there's the brush size right here just above her hat. And this is the default size, it's 35. If you want to change the brush size, it's down there, bottom left-hand corner, down in the options panel area. And I'll do just little strokes, kind of like that. Little stroke, let go, little stroke, let go. We may have to come back in and clean this up. That's okay, that usually happens when you're working with these refined edges. It will do part of this nice and part of it won't do so well. And that would take some cleanup, but that's okay. I expect that to happen. That's just how the tool works. This will, though, get a lot of the little fine hairs and things along the edge of that hat, which we want. It won't give us the fine fur here. This can be a problem. We'll see how well it does. We'll see if this is better than the last version I used. Back when I did this last time, I was using Photoshop 2013. I went ahead and looked that up. So that's quite a long time ago. Okay, there we go. Now come down here where it says output to, and we're going to be outputting this to a new layer with layer mask. Two reasons. One, I want that layer mask so we can make adjustments. And second, by giving us a new layer, it gives me a backup layer for this one image. So new layer with layer mask, choose OK. You see there's our backup layer that's now hidden. In case we mess things up, we can go back to that. And then here's our new layer. Now actually the fur looks pretty good this time. So the newer version here of the Refined Edge did a much better job on the fur, and it doesn't really need much cleanup. I'll go ahead and show you my little trick later on anyway, but it doesn't really need that much. Up here on the hat, not so good. There's some problems in the hat, and that's because, of course, we had that light sky, and the hat was almost the same color. Everything else, I think, looks pretty good, so we're okay. Maybe we can do a little bit of hardening up here on the edges over here and the edges over in here. And we can try it up in here. So we'll see how that works. So let's just zoom in on this and see what the edge looks like. And see here, it's just kind of breaking up on that edge. It should be right about out here. So we're losing part of that hat. And you can fix this over here on the layer mask side. That's why I like using layer masks, is because you can adjust them later on. You're not stuck with it. If I used the eraser tool, I would have been stuck. But I didn't, so I can come in here and make adjustments. And the first thing I like to try is to make the edge here harder edge instead of a softer edge on the layer mask. And for that, let's go over here to our tools. Right now it says sponge tool, but down here in the options panel, you want this one, kind of the hand, making a circle. This is the burn tool, and that's going to increase the exposure. And when you're using this on a layer mask, what it actually does is it makes it more contrasty. Okay, that's too much. It helps out here a bit, but it doesn't give me the edge I want. So this will take a couple of different techniques. I'm going to hold the space bar down, move my image over here. So you can see out here in the sky, it's good for that. It cleans the sky up just like I want. There we go, that's fine. Real nice job along the edges here. I wanted some of those little hairs showing over here, those little fibers showing on the hat. It did a good job on that. And this is cleaning out the stuff outside a bit further. So this is a good first step. We'll need to do more work on that in just a minute. Same thing here. I'll hold the spacebar down, move my image, and we'll just go around and stiffen up this edge using the burn tool. Did a real nice job here actually on the fur. This is much, much better than back with Elements 2013. That really didn't do a very good job at all. Took a lot of work to come in here and fix this edge. This is actually acceptable at this point. So there's one change. The Refine Edge tool is working much better than it did last time. And it actually saves a lot of work. Okay, we'll go along this edge here and just kind of stiffen this stuff up here. Did a good job on the hair in here as well. I lost this piece of hair last time. I didn't manage to keep that in, so much better than the earlier version of the Refine Edge. So there's one reason to get a newer version if you use this tool a lot. The more recent versions of Photoshop Elements have a much better version. Okay, everything looks good here except for this part of the hat. Now we can fix this. Take a little bit of hand work on this, where again, we're on the layer mask. And for a layer mask, black hides and white shows. So I want to first bring back in everything that's missing in here. So let's change our color here to white. Go up to the paintbrush. Here's my brush size, way too big. It's on a soft edge brush, but it's too large. Let's try 27. That's better. You can see it kind of right there. That's a pretty good size. Now I don't want it full soft. Let's go here into brush settings. And you can actually adjust your hardness right here. If you only use this control here, you either have 0 hardness, which is full soft, or you have full hardness, 0 soft. But on brush settings, you can actually change this. I want this about halfway through, about 50%, right there, 50% on my hardness. So it's a little soft, but not totally soft. That's what you want that to be. So that's one good use here for the brush setting. And then I'm using white. I'm just going to paint in here. And I'm going to paint this out until I see that edge, so I see the sky beginning to show. And once we know where the sky is, there it is. You can just kind of barely see the sky just coming in on that edge. And we'll go in and we will paint that in by hand. And let me see. If I go way out here like this, you can kind of see where the sky is. It's real hard. It's almost the same color, and that's why this got messed up. We know that the hat is right around in here somewhere. Even if we miss it completely, we're real close. A little bit of sky there to kind of imitate some of that fiber stuff. Notice in here the softness, the quality of the softness of the edge is similar to the quality over in here. So maybe it's a little bit too soft still. Let's go to our brush settings, and I'll make it a little bit harder, maybe about 70% right here. And now I want to hide the sky part of this. So let's change our color to black, and then paint in from the outside. I'm just going to come in just a little bit and just hand paint this in so it looks right. Be very careful about that. There we go. Now I've talked about this before, but the way I can get these real nice edges here, one is I'm going very slow. I'm taking my time on this. But more importantly, I use a wrist rest with my mouse. It's a little padded rest that my wrist sits on. So I'm moving the mouse with just my fingers. I'm not moving it with my arm. I'm not moving it with my hand. I'm only using my fingers. And that gives me much, much better control over the position of the mouse. So if you're not using a wrist rest, I highly recommend it when you're doing any kind of photo editing. Okay, I think that looks pretty good. I think we're right where we need to be on that hat. Spacebar and move it, looks good. Looks fine over here. I'm real happy with this fur on this side. This fur looks absolutely perfect, so we don't need to do anything over there actually. Okay, let's go to the zoom tool here and we'll zoom back out. I'm just going to hit fit screen. That should do it for us right there, or Control 0. So there's the basic girl in position now. Let's now move her back a little bit so that the sun is showing. So I want it just about here, like that. I want to see that fur on the right-hand side, so that's good. Maybe she's just a little bit small, so we can grab our corner up here and I'll make her just a little bit larger. Not too much. Just composition-wise, I think that looks a bit better. Hit the green check mark for okay. All right, now our background here has a lot of contrast to it. Obviously, big sun right here is going to give us hard contrast. Real dark darks in here. And the lights obviously are white practically right in the middle of that sun, so we have a real large contrast range. Not as much here on the girl, so we need to adjust the contrast of the girl so she blends in better with the new background. And for that, we'll use an adjustment layer. Now we're far enough into this project that I know it's going to work out well for us. I'm happy with how things are going. So now's a good time to save your project. It's a good idea to save as you go several times. I tend to save a lot more than you'll normally see here in these videos. Now, because we have layers over here, if I just do a save, it's going to automatically save this to the Photoshop file format, and that's what you want. So up here to File, come down to Save. It'll save back into the same location, but it'll come in as a Photoshop file, which is perfect. That saves your layers and everything else we'll be doing in here. Choose Save. And it's now saved at that point. So if this gets messed up, I can go back to that saved version. And again, I'll be saving as I go here. Now, one little tip that I think is a great one, and that's that I use a gaming mouse when I'm working in here with Photoshop Elements. And that's because it has extra buttons on the mouse. There are 2 buttons right by the thumb, and you can program those buttons to do whatever you want. I have one of those programmed buttons set up for the save command, which is just a Control-S keyboard shortcut. So I have that button set for Control-S keyboard shortcut, which means as I'm working, All I have to do is just tap that button with my thumb, and it does a real fast save. Saves me a lot of time and helps me to save frequently as I'm working. So if you don't mind going for the expense, they're not that expensive, about 50 bucks, I think, but really big time saver. Plus the mouse is a bit more accurate than your standard cheapo mouses. Okay, let's take care of our contrast. Go up here to layer right here, come down to new adjustment layer and levels. Where it says use previous layer, check that, choose OK. That just links this control to that one layer. Notice the indent up here. And you get your pop-up window. You can see this, that their darks are kind of in here. There's nothing really on the black side. There's like an empty area where it should be black and it's not. So pull the arrow in here a little bit and let's bring her jacket down as far as we can before we begin to lose detail. And it's kind of hard to see on the video, but there's some folds and things right down in here. If I go too far, that all blocks up as solid black. I don't want that, but I want it darker. So take it in as far as you can until you begin to lose some of that detail. And that's right around in here to my eye, right about there. So much better match now with the background. If you want, you can bring the right side in. This is the whites. It makes the hat a little bit brighter. I don't really see much of an effect anywhere else, maybe a little bit on her face, but not much. Most of these images can usually use a little bit of contrast boost anyway. And that's what we're doing here. By moving the ends in, we're increasing the contrast on the picture. Okay, that looks good. And we'll close that down. So our contrast now matches nicely. Now before I do the orange here on the edge of her skin and her hat, let me just talk about the fur back here. Again, this fur is perfect. I have no problem with this. I'm very happy with that fur. Doesn't need anything else. But last time what I did was a special trick. I just want to show you what that trick is in case you had that problem. Let's go over here to your paintbrush and come down where it says brush. Bring this up. These are your standard default brushes. And then scroll down. It's a little ways down here, about 3/4 of the way down. So getting close in here. There we go. There are these two brushes. These are grass brushes. And they're great for coming in and faking in fur like that. Click on a grass brush. They're going to clip. And here's our grass brush. You see that? And it's about the right size. Let's come down to the photo layer right here. Look for that light blue outline. And then let's take the color picker and choose a color right in here, right in the middle range, middle light range of the fur. That's pretty good. And then all you have to do is come in and just tap this brush in here to give you that kind of fur effect. I'm going to zoom in on this so you can actually see what's happening on this. It's a great trick to know about if you need to. So there's our brush. I just tap that in and it gets kind of a brushy effect. It's too light. I can pull that back a little bit and actually darken that down. I'll use the Control Z to back up. Now, one good protection on this, one way to kind of work around that, let's go up here to the top layer. Let's make a new layer above this layer. And then do your brushing this new layer. Now notice the angle of the brush here. It's kind of wrong. Come down to brush settings and you can change the angle right here until you get just the angle that you want. But in right there, there is that kind of effect. So you can use this to come in and paint in new fur if you tend to miss things like fur. So it's a nice little trick that actually is occasionally useful. Okay, let's just get rid of this one layer up here. Trash that one. There we go. And I'll go back to Control 0 to fit screen. So that's how I fixed the fur last time. But I don't need to now because this new version works out great. We'll go back here to our brushes, 27 pixel brush, that's okay. All right, let's now take care of this light edge right along here. Now I want to have kind of an orangey color in here. And I'll bring my brush size up. Now I want to see the exact size, so I'll use the right square bracket, just tap that and bring the brush size up. And that's pretty good right here. It's pretty large, but that's what I want. Let's make a new layer above this layer. Here we go. And we'll grab a color in here from the sun. On one of the darker kind of orangey colors. That looks pretty good right in there. Good color. Choose OK. And it's on a new layer, as you can see up here. I'm just going to brush right along the edge. So my brush is kind of straddling that edge. And come in, just come right down along the nose here. A little bit down this side. The face. We can take it out if we need to. But that's about what I want right here. Now I want this only affecting just the girl and not the background image. So on this layer, it says Layer 2, right-click and create clipping mask. That links it into just the girl's image, as you can see right here. And I want to blend this in with the girl's image so that we're not seeing it kind of sticking out funny like this. So go up here to the blend modes. And the way I normally work with blend modes is you click on it once and you can then use a wheel on your mouse and just kind of wheel through this. And you can see the effect going through here on this. And I'm thinking down in this range someplace, maybe screen will work out pretty well. That's not really what I want. Okay, linear burn is closer, but it's too much color in here on this side. I want just a little bit of that. So you need to bring that back a bit. We can do that by coming in and adding a layer mask to this layer. There we go. We have black. We have our brush down here. I want this to be a fully soft brush. Go back to our brush settings, make sure that hardness is clear to 0, and it is. And I'll bring my size up a little bit. Again, I'll use the right square bracket to increase my size. I'm just going to slowly paint in here black and kind of edge my way in until I get that happening just along that edge. I don't want much, just a little bit right along that edge. There we go. And on our nose in here, kind of get it away from her face. So just catching the rim in there of her face. And that's just about what I want. Right like that, just a little bit of a hint in here of color along that edge. And that helps to link her image into that sun in behind. And that looks pretty good. Just click the background here so we don't see that kind of square happening. Now, the last thing I want to do here is to warm up the rest of the girl's image in here. Just make her a bit warmer to help match this kind of glow we have happening. And for that, make sure on the photo layer right here, our subject layer, let's add a photo filter onto this layer. Go up to layer, come down to new adjustment layer and photo filter. Again, check for that checkbox, choose OK. This brings in our warming filters. There are several in here. There's an 85, and this one here, kind of orangey thing. Here's a warmer filter here. It's a bit more yellow on this one. You also can come down and use an actual yellow if you want to. I think that's kind of odd looking. You can come in and choose several different of these warming colors. That's kind of nice. That's not too bad, kind of a deep yellow. I'm thinking though more of an orange in here is better than just going more yellow on the edge. And it just warms up the image a little bit. I can show or hide that effect right here. There's without. Notice how the hat's kind of blue. And with, and the hat has more of an orange color to it. This helps to blend this in with the warmth we're seeing over in here. Technically, that really should be blue like that because it's on the side away from the warmth. But visually, it works better if this is warmed up to match the warmths in this part of the image. So I'll do that against a subtle little effect, but these little subtle effects really make all the difference on making this a believable image. And if you enjoyed this video, make sure you hit that like button. Make sure you click on share and subscribe as well if you haven't already done so. And don't forget to take a look at my complete training course for Photoshop Elements. It really is the best way to learn how to use this great photo program. And I'll see you next time.